Welcome to this week's edition of The Scots in Us. I'm Camilla Hellman, President of the American Scottish Foundation. And this time we're going to be journeying up the coast of Scotland, up to Harris and Lewis, to the Hebridean Islands. And we're going to be joined for an update from the Harris Distillery, who are just about to launch their whiskey. We have heard and become lovers of their gin, which is so wonderful. But we're going to hear today from Simon Erlanger of the progress and news around the long-anticipated whiskey. The Hebridean Isles are bursting with culture, and so we will be hearing more about their festival, which is about to take place on the 12th to the 15th of July. If you are in Scotland or nearby or just arriving, this is a must-do if you can. And so without further ado, let's join Simon Erlanger. Welcome to this week's Scots in Us. And I'm delighted to begin our conversations around the Hebrides and the island of Lewis with our very good friend, Simon Erlanger. Simon is the managing director of the Harris Distillery. And we have been very proud at the ASF to be part of the journey and hearing updates and news from Harris for the past year or 9-10 years, Simon, isn't it? And so welcome today, and we're looking forward to hearing your latest news, because I've got a feeling you've got some big news for us.
Well, absolutely. Good afternoon, Camilla, or good morning, whatever time it is with you. But yeah, lovely to speak to you again. As you say, it's been over the last few years, we've had our periodic updates, haven't we? And you've been following our story with great interest, which is fantastic. So yeah, it's exciting times for us at the distillery. I don't know if you remember, we started distilling our whiskey back in 2016, and literally 3-4 weeks ago, we finally announced the launch date. So our single malt whiskey, which will be called the Herach, so a native of Harris is a Herach in Scots Gaelic. Just as a native of Lewis is a Lewisach. So the Herach single malt whiskey will be officially launched on the Isle of Harris in the village of Tarbert on the 22nd of September of this year.
And you really have grown this from an acorn of an idea into this wonderful oak tree. Let's stay with the acorns, because it's wonderful, because it came up as an idea, you took it forward, and now when we were last speaking, you had 45 people working at the distillery, because of course you began with gin.
Yes, well, that's right. And as you remember, the idea for the distillery wasn't my idea. It was Anderson Bakewell, who's our founder director. And he has been connected to the island for 50 years and has seen the population halve in that time. And it was he who wanted to build a distillery to try to reverse the population decline. And we set out with an ambition of employing 20 people. And as you say, we've got 45 people on our books, so we're now the biggest employer in Harris, and it's such a buzz around the place to have all these people. And I'm particularly proud of what I think about 40% of those people are under the age of 30. So what we're doing, which I think was my real dream, was we're taking young people out of school. We're taking young people who've been to university and have been away and then want to come back to the island, and giving them careers. And the other thing that I love about it is the number of people within the team who've moved from one part of the business to another. So they're not stuck in silos. So they might work in hospitality and then decide they want to be in whiskey making. Or they might be in the bottling area and then end up in the marketing side. So we've got lots of people who are kind of developing quite interesting careers.
And they're not just in Harris. They're traveling the world with you. You're global at this point. You're over in the United States. I've met a couple of your team over here that are fantastic ambassadors for you and marketing away. That must be very exciting to the others of them to see that opportunity.
Exactly. So as you say, Iona is now traveling almost every 2 or 3 months to the USA. my latest graduate recruitment, Ailey, who's in her early 20s, has just taken on responsibility for France, Germany, and China.
Whoa.
So we've got people, we really are reaching out across the world with our little bottle of gin, and soon to be accompanied by a bottle of single malt whiskey.
So one of the wonderful things about your gin is the bottle. It has so much emotion to it. It reflects so much the island, the beautiful blue of it, the whole way it swirls.
Thank you.
Have you got a bottle of the whiskey to show us?
I have, but I'd have to shoot you first. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'd hate to do that.
I don't get it. I don't get to see it yet. But is it wonderful?
Nobody gets to see it yet. So we're keeping that under wraps until launch day. So the idea, because we're from the distillery, we're from the island, we're for the island. So we think the firsts should always happen on the island. So on the 22nd of September, on the Friday afternoon, we're going to have some invited guests from the island. And there we're going to reveal the bottle for the first time and reveal the dram for the first time. So the first dram of the Herach, the first toast of the Herach, will be on that day for people on the island. And then after that, we can then send it out into the world. But yeah, in terms of the bottle, that was quite fun because we had this agency called Stranger and Stranger, who are a wonderful design agency. They're the best in the world for packaging design. And they came and they spent 2 or 3 days on the island, I think it was May, June 2012, 2013,
Whoa.
so literally 10 years ago. And they went home and designed the gin bottle, and they designed the whiskey bottle at the same time. So these two bottles have been sitting kind of on the computer for a decade now, waiting obviously for the whiskey bottle to join the gin bottle. So hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised and delighted that the whiskey bottle has a kind of family resemblance, but is also very different from the gin. But both of them designed to represent the island in a different way.
Well, we're going to make a note in our programming that we need to be catching up with you that final week in September when we'll be allowed to view the bottle and hear of your launch, and making that part of our October push, because that's so exciting.
It's exciting.
And when will we be able to taste the whiskey over here?
Yes, well, it should be available in New York and across the key United States from mid-October. So it'll land in Texas at our importers at the end of September, and then be available for launch very shortly after that. So yeah, we can. What we'll have is our website, as always. We'll have its stockist page, and that will update it to show which retailers are selling the Herach as well as the gin.
Now, you have won incredible awards for the gin. So before we finish today, I've got two sort of questions. One is, what's next with the gin? Further, are you going to do another blend, or is this the signature blend, and that's where you're staying? And also, before I forget, to find out for people in Scotland who may be coming up to see you at the Hebridean festival that's coming up in July. I want to ask you about that. But first of all, tell me a little bit about what's up for the gin.
So the gin, the great thing about the gin is we keep it incredibly simple. We simply make one gin, and we try to do it really well, time after time after time. So our signature gin, which is made with using this sugar kelp, the seaweed that's dived for us here on the island. We have thought occasionally about producing a different variant, a different flavor, but it's very difficult to sort of know what we would do differently. We're not really wanting to follow any fads and do, colored gins and flavored gins and gin liqueurs. We like to keep it quite pure. So it's actually a creative challenge. We don't know quite what we would do if we made a second one. So I'm not saying we will never do that, but for the moment, the focus is there's so much opportunity out there, especially in the United States. So many people who've not even tried it yet that, we're busy enough just kind of introducing Isle of Harris gin as it stands to the consumers in the USA.
And I have seen your gift sets. and the glasses that go with it, and all these different add-ons to make the perfect gin. And I think that that's what I'm looking forward to seeing us able to share with everybody, because you have the whole the book on explaining it and the whole thing, and so that will be fun to see more of.
Get those into the USA.
But tell me, if you can, about the festival that's happening in a few days' time.
So we have this wonderful festival in Stornoway, which is the capital of the Isle of Lewis. And for those of you who aren't aware, Isle of Lewis and the Isle of Harris are actually one island. The Harris part happens to be the southern part of the island and the most beautiful bit. But the Isle of Lewis is pretty spectacular as well. And that's where the main town is, Stornoway. And Stornoway's hosted this wonderful Celtic music festival for, 20 years now, I think, called Hebcelt. And it's a 3-day event. It's a lovely family event full of traditional music from Scotland, but also other Celtic nations. And for the first time this year, Isle of Harris Distillery is sponsoring an acoustic tent. So we'll have our own tent where there'll be live music played, and believe it or not, Isle of Harris gin flowing at the same time.
Well, that sounds so fantastic. So we will share that with everybody if they're in Scotland or making their way over, to remember to be there.
You'd have to be there you have to book very quickly, because the ferries and the hotels and the tickets, even, I don't know whether there are tickets left at Hebcelt, but you'd need to move very fast to get a space, or to get somewhere to sleep, or just bring a tent.
But you bring up a thing. We forget that you've got to take a ferry or take a plane to get there.
Well, the logistics are an interesting challenge. That's why these islands are so special, because it's so hard to get here.
Well, thank you so much for making the time this morning to talk to us again and give us another update. Please say hello to Iona, and we'll talk to you very shortly again.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Camilla. Bye-bye.
And now I'm delighted that I'm able to finally catch up with the Hebridean baker, who I had the pleasure of meeting and working with over Tartan Week this year. We were able to bring the musical side of our baker to life at the Bryant Park, but I'm going to let him tell us about that in a moment. But welcome and thank you for joining us today and bringing us up to date on all things you are doing.
Well, Falcha, Camilla, great to be in touch again. And you're right, what a day we had in Bryant Park. The sun was shining. I don't know if there was ever so many kilts in one square a square foot of New York ever. And Gaelic tunes, bagpipes, everything. What a treat it was.
Well, we're delighted you were a part of it. And hopefully, because your love of Gaelic, the mod, and all those other sides of your life are something that I am looking forward to seeing you back in New York and taking part in the events of the parade, but also coming over to Bryant Park, because we have such a wonderful time there. But let's turn everything back a bit. You have a deep, passionate love of where you grew up, of the islands, of Harris and Lewis and the Hebridean Islands. Could you tell us about your early life and how that led you on this path of now being the Hebridean baker?
Oh, well, as you say, Camilla, it is a really special place. And to put into context, where I'm from in the Isle of Lewis, which is a wee village called Cremor, which is the Gaelic for a big cow. I mean, I'm nearer to the south coast of Iceland than I am the south coast of England. You know, it really is a kind of northerly island. And it was a very special and idyllic upbringing. My father was a fisherman, a trawler fisherman. My mother was a Harris tweed weaver. And myself and my three brothers, as you'd imagine in such a trusted place, had just the reins and runs of the village to do what we wanted. But central to all that was the language of Gaelic, which was the first language of the home, and of course food as well. You know, it played such a central part in family life, and I think my passion for traditional recipes and the stories of the islands very much came from my mother, but particularly my aunts as well. My aunt Belak, who features in my first book, actually, she's just about to turn 95, still bakes every day. Her husband Murdo at 96 still happily has his clooty dumpling and pancakes for his afternoon tea. So I think the secret to a long life is definitely Hebridean recipes.
And clotted cream by the sounds of it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I love your recipe books. They're not recipe books, that's cookbooks. They're not at all. They're a story of the islands, as you say, telling a story to the recipes that are within it. And it's really been a phenomena. So you're now working, we had such a time trying to catch up with you this week because you're working on your third book. But
that's right. Yeah.
Can you give us an insight into that first book and how it took off? Because you are the best-selling cookbook, Scottish cookbook. You know, you really are quite the media star.
It has been wonderful. And it all started so innocently, to be honest with you. I just really wanted to share with others on the island to make sure that people didn't forget our traditional recipes and stories, never imagining they might resonate across the world. And it actually, one of the first things that happened, Camilla, you might know the ladies' magazine Elle magazine,
Yes,
in America.
Yeah.
And the columnist in Elle magazine, a lady called Rose, based in New York, she wrote her column in the magazine saying, it was when our old pal Mr. Trump was going to ban TikTok, if you remember that a few years back. And she said, the only thing I'll miss about TikTok is the Hebridean baker. And I was totally unaware of this, that she had written this column. She never contacted me. But I remember waking up the next morning. Now, I had made, I think it was some traditional griddle pancakes or griddle scones the day before and made a video about it. I woke up the next morning to, I think, 400,000 people had watched this video overnight. And I was like, well, they were good scones, but I don't know if they were that good. Then the next day, more and tens of thousands of followers. And suddenly I realized that my stories and recipes were starting to resonate throughout North America. And I still always wonder what it was. Was it just the storylines I was trying to create, or the escapism as well? But they certainly were resonating.
The visuals are fabulous, because I mean, they really are. You must be also a very good photographer, because when you were starting off with all this, the photography and the film is so important. But that you bring the magic of the island there, and I think, and also your dog.
Well, good point, Camilla. To be fair, I think I genuinely get in the way of Shorus, my West Highland Terrier's global stardom with my recipes. Somebody once asked me, shouldn't Shorus have his own social media? And I was like, no way, because nobody would ever come to see mine anymore. But yes, Shorus is an absolute star. But you're right, the landscapes, culture, and just our identity, because you know, Camilla, the Outer Hebrides, we are very proudly Scottish, but we are a wee bit different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to celebrate both sides of that, our Scottishness, but our uniqueness as well. The reason why I encourage folk when they visit to take that ferry, you know, over the Minch to the Hebrides, because they're going to experience things they could never experience somewhere else.
No, exactly. And people, as we were saying earlier, people don't realize the beauty you have, the beautiful beaches you have there.
Well,
it really is gorgeous.
It is. And this week we have had lovely weather here. And I've been on Luscantire and Hushinish and Bosta. For your listeners who have been to the islands, they'll be going, yes, I love that beach. Yes, I love this beach. But it is a special place, you know, to find yourself in the center of a 5,000-year-old stone circle at Callanish Stones, or maybe hearing the Gaelic language for the first time, or being spun round at a ceilidh by a burly man in a kilt. You know, there's plenty to entice you to the islands for sure. And of course, the food is wonderful too.
But you also have a very, you love obviously music, and that's come through, but that plays a large part in all of this as well. And putting the Gaelic language, having that become a part of a promotion, of marketing and promotion through all of your song.
Yeah, you're right. I think, you know, Camilla, there's only 60,000 of us in the world that speak Gaelic. And as a result, it's nearly incumbent on each speaker to not only speak the language, but promote it and give others the opportunity to learn a little bit about it. And be it through small Gaelic lessons, but predominantly music, I find that is a lovely way to be introduced to the language. And we have beautiful singers like Julie Fowlis and Karen Matheson and Kathleen McInnes, but also the wonderful Royal National Mod, which is a week-long celebration, but also competitions of Gaelic singing and piping and dancing, which is hosted in a different town or city in Scotland each year. But at the same time, of course, there are mods or Gaelic song contests across North America as well. And as part of New York Tartan Week, we were delighted to host the first ever New York Tartan Week mod, which was a great success.
Yeah, I know.
It just continues for years.
We were all a part of it. And I was so delighted when I heard that, because we're part of the organizing committee for the parade, that we were going to be, putting this together. It was wonderful. And you made it happen. And thank you so much. But let's take a moment also to hear from you at Brant Park. Would you like to introduce maybe the winner, whose name I don't have to hand, and who you were singing with?
So when we headed to Bryant Park, we were so fortunate that we had mod gold medalist Joy Dunlop with us, but also the first ever winner of the New York Tartan Week mod, Cynthia Knight from Virginia. She sang the beautiful traditional song, Oh Boy, and it brought us all to tears.
No, it was wonderful. And so let's take a listen to that and catch up in a moment again. Her voice is absolutely magical. All of you, that was fantastic. I don't know if everybody understood anything that was being said, but it just sounded wonderful.
The sentiment and the melody is enough, isn't it, sometimes, Camilla? And
Exactly.
that was so special.
But also, I think it's very important that we remember that, as you say, there's 60,000 people worldwide who speak Gaelic. And therefore, I think it's wonderful that the New York Caledonians promote language classes, Shusa down in Carolina, the same, and that there are these pockets of doing so. And we're talking of Carolina, you and I will see you down there, will be down at Grandfather Mountain in a few weeks.
Well, I'm so pleased. When you told me you were coming and I was going to see you, that just made it even better. But this will be my first ever Highland Games in North America. So heading to Grandfather Mountain in North Carolina. And keep me right here, Camilla, but I believe is it the biggest of the Highland Games in the south of the country?
In the south, yes. I was really amazed when I went to my first Highland Games in the United States because they are so big. But you're going to Grandfather Mountain is the most traditional and authentic to maybe what a Scottish Highland Games is, because many of them also now are more of a festival with a lot of other things happening. But they have a wonderful heritage tent, and it is a real celebration, and I love it. I've been down there for the past, I went down last year and the year before, and then before the pandemic. And it really is on the calendar. So I think you're going to
Oh
have a
my
great
goodness,
time.
absolutely. I
Are
think it's
you
going to be
signing
fantastic.
books? Are you signing books?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of events. I've got my own tent as part
Right.
of the event. So I will be doing events during the day, but we have special events at 6 p.m. each night at Preacher Rock. We're calling
Right.
them the Hebridean Baker Cayley. So there'll be stories, Gaelic music, and of course, books as well. And of course, there is a Grandfather Mountain mod as well. So I'm going to be entering that. But honestly, Camilla, when I looked at the schedule of the day, it just looks so much fun. You know, you've got obviously the heavy athletics event, you've got the Highland dancing, there's whiskey tasting, there's sheepdog
Sheep
demonstrations.
herding, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of my dream weekend. So head into that and really looking forward to it. And luckily, I'm staying for a few extra days, heading down to Greenville, South Carolina, for a book event before heading up to Massachusetts for a couple of events there. So another really special trip to the US. I'm so fortunate to be able to visit again.
Well, that is absolutely the largest one and the most authentic, probably. And then we have New Hampshire in September at Loon Mountain, which is another fabulous one. Also out on the West Coast, we have Pleasanton up in San Francisco, huge, about 100,000. And down in Bethlehem, they have the Celtic Classic, which we'll also be going to. But the American Scottish Foundation really enjoys going to them to the games, and we do sort of a village tent of several of our members, corporate members, to tell of what they're doing. So yes, I'm a great fan of the Highland Games. We get to see people, and that,
Yeah,
as you
it is
say,
literally, it's a
is so
Cayley. It's going to be
important.
a great Cayley. And as I said, this is my first. I'm so excited. So if there is any organizers of Highland Games out there listening who think, oh, a wee Hebridean Baker visit would be great, get in touch anytime.
I think you're going to be inundated. It'd be lovely to see you. So in closing, could you tell us a little bit about Head Celt, which is going to be going on when you're over? You're going to be over at Grandfather, but you've been involved in that. But that's really brings the culture of the islands together.
So the Hebridean Celtic Festival has been hosted in Stornoway for over 20 years, and it is really one of the biggest music festivals now in Scotland, and certainly the north of Scotland. And it's in the castle grounds in Stornoway, so it is just an iconic spot. You know, the castle, you know, in the background and the music going. And we have all types of traditional folk and folk rock music. I mean, everybody this year from, if you remember the Irish band, the Corrs, Sharon Corr is performing on the same night as probably our most iconic band at the moment, Pete and Diesel, who have become this phenomenon. They're kind of like, I don't know, the Hebridean version of the Saw Doctors. Their songs are both hilarious and anthemic. So they're headlining on the Friday night. And, you know, we've got the Proclaimers playing on the Saturday night.
Oh, great.
It really is. I mean, Stornoway for that weekend
will be
absolutely comes alive. And, you know, sad to be missing it, delighted to be going to Grandfather Mountain, but I know I'll be back there next year.
Well, thank you so much for catching up with us this morning, and we would love it if we can check in with you again in a month or so and hear how you did down at Grandfather, but also maybe to give us more of an insight into the music, the Gaelic music that is happening, and some of the artists. We do a monthly music program called Sounds from Scotland, and maybe I think we're overdue for doing a Gaelic spotlight. So I hope
love that.
If you could help us on that. The multi-talented Hebridean maker. Thank you so much for being with us. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, Camilla.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of The Scots in Us. We bring the programs to you the first and third Monday of the month, and they can be found on all your favorite video and podcast platforms. Our library has over 100 episodes now. We also invite you to become a member of the American Scottish Foundation by going to our website, americanscottishfoundation.com, and clicking on Support Us. There are many different ways to become involved, and we'd love to hear from you and have you a part of the foundation. Thank you for joining us. Till next time.